special speaker this morning. A.B., would you come up here? All right. Okay. Now, many of you actually know A.B. Baggett because he's a member here. That's right. How long has he been here?
Oh, and he brought the fudge.
I was getting to that. The man can cook. And if you notice the aroma in the class, it's like fudge and it's cookies and it's all sorts of cool stuff. And
I took a bath, so that
explains it. All right. A.B. Baggett, minor high school, went to Harding in Bible, undergraduate. Auburn, Master of Science in Music Education. Okay. Montevallo, Advanced Teaching Certificate, and then to North Texas State. We don't know why I went there, but it may have something to do with the CIA. I'm going to ask Leon right after class. All right. He is now the assistant at both Berry Middle School and Spain Park as the band. The man is musical. He plays, you don't know about his secret life, he plays in the Joe Giatina 40s band. He plays with the Bob Moore band, also a big band, and Celebration Winds. He is the only trombone player in Celebration Winds. Okay.
No.
He's one of the, this just in, he's one of the trombone players in Celebration Winds. Okay. He has many cars. He's got tags for 9. Now this was about a year ago. Is this still current? Okay.
Yeah.
You got 3 or 4 more that are on the grass, tagless.
Blocks.
Okay.
Pretty blocks, though.
Okay. He is known to have a Music Is My Life bumper sticker, but the big deal is that A.B. gave up chairmanship at the prestigious John Philip Sousa Society in New York to actually be here, stay at Homewood, and teach today. Please welcome A.B. Baggett.
Thank you. Before we get started, this was given. Please make this announcement. Fuel the Vision 24-hour prayer will be held on Saturday, April the 12th, beginning at 9 a.m. and ending Sunday, April the 13th at 9 a.m. During this time, we will be joining together to pray over prayer request cards that have been turned in over the next few weeks. All of you have received 2 prayer request cards in your Fuel the Vision information packet. Please take time to fill them out and place them in the Fuel the Vision boxes that have been placed throughout the church. Whatever the request may be, you're encouraged to turn it in so it can be prayed over 24 times during the prayer vigil. If you have any questions, you can see Jacob Hall or Robert Reed. All right, as we get started today, this was the song that I really wanted to sing, but I was afraid of it. Does anybody know that song? Does anybody recognize that song? Just a few. I don't remember singing it here in a while, but that's kind of basically the thought of the lesson for today. Now, there's orders of old business we need to go over. I did this lesson September the 8th, and not everybody told me how wonderful of a job it was. In fact, being around John Hill, I took the number of people that told me how wonderful it was and subtracted it from the total number and then divided that total number into the people who didn't, and I came up with this percentage. Now, I don't know. I don't exactly know what that means, that nobody told me how wonderful it was, but that's not the issue. Before I got up here, Brother Russ said, you know, A.B. plays in a band that plays at nursing homes. And everybody just kind of laughed and snickered and guffawed at me that I play in a band that plays at nursing homes. Well, I want you to know, I play in a band that plays at nursing homes. And we go out and we play at different places in Birmingham, in the Birmingham area, and we play for these people who are not able to get out and be around people that get out and hear this kind of music. And this is the kind of the list. This is our set list. We play like Woodchopper's Ball, the Woody Herman thing, and then Nice and Easy, a Frank Sinatra tune. And we do some of these theme from Ice Castles. We do Mac the Knife, these kind of things, and end with Stars Fell in Alabama. And so we go out just about every Monday night. That's our schedule that we do and that we've done so far. And we play for these people. And so, to me, all you people that thought it was so funny, we're going to sing an invitation song. Want you to come forward. I got a pre-printed response card for you. Then on next Sunday, we're not going to have the order of worship. We're going to have all those people who came forward. So how do you like them apples? Actually, I'm very proud of these people that do this, and occasionally, I remember one time we were playing a job, and there was this lady, and she was just, the only thing holding her in a wheelchair were straps. And she was hung over this way and just barely hanging in the chair, and we were playing, and I looked, and she was doing this to the music. And I thought, you know, this is worth it. Anyway, very proud of those people. So, as we get into our lesson, our text is from Matthew 22, and it says, "But the Pharisees heard that Jesus had silenced the Sadducees. They gathered themselves together. One of them, a lawyer, asked him a question, testing him, 'Teacher, which is the great commandment in the law?' And he said to him, 'You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind. This is the great and foremost commandment. The second is like it, you shall love your neighbor as yourself.' On these two commandments depend the whole law and the prophets." We have two commandments. Love the Lord, love your neighbor. But then we have a necessary inference too. Remember necessary inference? Remember when we were growing up we were taught there's three ways that we get the authority to do things. One is a direct command, two is an apostolic example, and three, then a necessary inference. And so if you look like at 1 Corinthians 16:2, where it says upon the first day, let everybody lay it by in store. Well, that's for a specific example of taking up a collection. But we use that as an example that it's all right for us to take up a collection, because I don't think any of us think Paul's going to come collect the money. But we use that as an example. And then, as a necessary inference, you know, we buy these 12-inch chrome plates with, you know, felt in the bottom so you can't hear your money drop. And we pass that around. That's a necessary inference. Well, our two commands are to love God, love our neighbor, and then also to love ourselves. And so it happens that it was September 1985, and I was sitting around the supper table with my family, and my oldest son Brad says, "Hey Dad, do you want me to wrap Mom's birthday present for tomorrow night?" And being the macho man that I am, I said, "No, thank you, Brad. You know, I have all that under control." Now, if you don't speak man language, if you don't know the man dialect, what I was really saying, are you kidding? Tomorrow night is Diane's birthday. So, what am I going to do? Well, I have a divine epiphany. I realize that Diane is kind of straightening up the kitchen. She's trying to remodel the kitchen, and she's painted the cabinets, but we're on my salary and then some child support, and so she just can't go out and buy all the hardware, the hinges and the handles and all this kind of thing. And I said, that's what I'm going to do. So I go out to my 74 Volvo 145 that I replaced the fuel pump on, but I replaced it with a used fuel pump. And the car would start great if it were cold, but if you had compression inside the motor, like if you stopped at the grocery store and turned it off, it wouldn't start because it didn't have enough pressure to push the fuel through the engine. So all I did was park on a hill. 5 years I parked on a hill. Everywhere I went, I found a hill. When I played the circus and the ice shows, I'd park 3 blocks away from the Civic Center. 11 o'clock at night, I'd walk through downtown Birmingham, get in my Volvo, roll it off the hill by the Alabama School of Fine Arts, crank it, and come home. Not a big deal. So I get the 3 little ones, and I load them up in the Volvo, and I roll it off the hill, and I go to home quarters over in Hoover. That's where Sam's is now. And if you notice at the furthest end, there's a little slope in the parking lot. So I parked the Volvo down there, walked the 4-year-old, the 3-year-old, and the 1-year-old into home quarters to buy the hardware. Well, they only have about 3 or 4 of the pieces of the 12 pieces I need. So that kind of worries me. So I said, okay, load the kids back up. We go over to Vestavia. Now this is where the party supply place is. Sweet Hill. Sweet hill in front of that one. So I park the Volvo up there, walk the kids through the traffic, go in, and buy what they only have about 2 or 3 more. So I'm still about 6 in the hole, and this lady comes up and asks me the problem, and I tell her what's going on, and she says, well, let me call Midfield. So she calls Midfield, and Midfield says, we got a plethora and a half of that stuff. Send them over here. So we're nearly out of gas, so we roll the car off, and we go to the service station in Hoover, which is where that Subway is now, right across from Golden Rule in front of Outback and Greenville. There used to be a service station there with a nice little hill in front of it. So I get gas, I take the kids in. You know, it's been 45 minutes since we've eaten, so I take them in and buy them a Coca-Cola, you know, and some Skittles or something like that, because it's going to be an hour before they go to bed anyway. What harm could that do? So I roll them off, and we get over to Midfield. Parking lot is as flat as the Mojave Desert. I mean, there is nothing there. There's not a slope anywhere. But I look across the street and there's a Sears. Okay, Sears is on this mountain. I mean, it's so tall it's September, and it's snowing at Sears. I mean, it is that tall of a mountain. So I go over there, I drop off the 4-year-old and the 3-year-old and say, stand here on the sidewalk while I go park the car. Now, I mean, what could go wrong? So I get Carson, and he and I come down, and of course when we get there, telling Taylor to stay still is like telling water not to be wet, you know. So where's Taylor? Well, he's already gone inside, you know. So I go running in with them and find him, sure enough, buy everything. And so I'm through, mission completed. So I go back and I say, Hunter, Taylor, y'all stand here. And then I do what any good daddy would do, I lie. I say, Taylor, if you move, a monster's gonna eat you. Don't move. All right, so I go across the street with Carson. We come back, and sure enough, there's Hunter, you know, standing. Where's Taylor? Well, he wanted to see the monster. All right, so I go in, I find Taylor. We load everybody up. We go home. It's dark now, and so I back the Volvo up in case I have to make a trip. Feeling pretty good about myself. Next day, I get up, go to school. After school, I go to the Galleria. Park at the top of the parking deck. There's nothing up there. There's just dead animal bones where they've died. Nobody ever goes up there, but I got a good running start from there. So I go in, get the cookie company cookie, you know, and take it home. Then I get home and I wrap the present in newspaper, because in the 80s everybody was trying to conserve, you know, money and that sort of thing. Plus, I'd forgotten to buy wrapping paper. So I wrapped it, and then I found a bow in the bottom of the closet, kind of taped it on. So Everett had this really nice party there that night. And then, after that, we put everybody to bed, and I'm kind of laying in bed, and I'm just thinking, you know, I'm not thinking about anything in particular. I'm just thinking, you know, what I'm going to say when they give me the award. And Diane comes in and she says, I just want you to know, of all the birthdays and Mother's Days and anniversaries I've ever had, today was the absolute, today was the absolute worst. And I said, oh. And so, you know, to quote Paul Newman from Cool Hand Luke, and I think I can quote Cool Hand Luke in church, because I saw it at Harding in the auditorium when we had the free movie nights. But it appears we have a problem. What is it? It appears that we have a failure to communicate. We have a failure to communicate. So how can we have a failure to communicate? Well, that's what I want us to talk about today, is how do we have this failure to communicate? And what I'd like for us to do is, I would like to look at 3 considerations. I'd like to look at the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, the Ruby rules, and then the 5 languages of love. And why would we do that? Well, if the 2 greatest commandments are to love God and our neighbor, and maybe there are circumstances or considerations that we need to look at in order to know how better to love each other. And so Maslow was a psychologist. He was a humanistic psychologist, and he developed the hierarchy of needs. And what he said was, we need basic needs, and unless you meet those needs, you really can't obtain to the level of self-actualization. That was his term. I think if we look at the Bible, that would be the term that I think would mean perfected in the Scripture. And so to meet all these needs, you have to provide the food, you have to provide the water, and all this kind of thing, all these sort of things, and provide the safety. And so you look like in James, where it talks about pure and undefiled religion before God is to visit the fatherless and the widows in their affliction. Also it says, if you see a brother in need of food or clothing and you say, be ye warmed and filled, and don't do anything, what have you done? And so I want to make sure that you understand, I'm saying that the Bible, that the Bible supports this, that the Bible is what we believe, and this backs that up. Not that we believe this and the Bible backs it up, but the Bible is the most important thing. And we talk about the protection that God gives us, and I think that's important also. But educators began to realize this. This past January, I had the opportunity to hear Dr. Tommy Bice at the Alabama Music Education Association, all music educators. And so Dr. Bice talks about how music education is the crux of education, that it's the foundation of education, that the whole world revolves around music education. We're kind of standing there saying, thank you, Dr. Bice. We realize you really believe that. But one thing he did say, the reason he couldn't buy a lot of, put a lot of money into the education, into the arts program, because there are 95 million school lunches served in Alabama last year. 64% were free. Because you can't learn your tutums. You can't learn your tutums like tutums 2 and tutums 3 and tutums 4. You can't learn your tutums if you're starving to death. In fact, a friend of mine is doing his research on how poverty affects music education in the state, and I saw him and he told me that there are 10 schools in the state of Alabama that the free lunch percentage, free and reduced lunch, is 100%. Nobody can afford to eat at that school. In fact, he said in his community, there's a group of people that fix sacks of food for these kids to take home on Friday afternoon over the weekend so that they will have something to eat. And so I look at that as to say what we're doing with the feeding the homeless, that's important. It's hard to get them to understand anything when they're starving to death. Same thing goes with bullying. It's difficult to learn how to conjugate nouns if you're afraid when you walk out somebody's going to stick your head in the toilet, So bullying has become an issue, and a lot of this has to do with how students make fun of other people. And I think as this relates to us and loving our neighbor, then our congregation, we as a people, we have to be inviting to these other people so that they feel good about coming to our congregation and that they don't feel bullied or made fun of, and that we are helping to provide them with the needs that they need. All right, and so that's Maslow's consideration, or the consideration I asked you concerning Maslow. Ruby's rules. Ruby Payne, Dr. Ruby Payne, is an education teacher, and she did research. She taught, I think her background was she taught in a pretty nice area in Texas. Her husband got transferred, she moved, and then she went to a poor area. And she said it was totally different, and she couldn't understand why. She had been very successful, and then all of a sudden everything she was doing was not working out. And she absolutely couldn't figure out why, and then she began to do this study. And what she realized, like when you look at education, she was telling these other students at her old place, if you do this, this is what's going to get you in college. When she was talking to the poverty people, that didn't mean anything. They weren't going to college anyway. And so she began to realize that there was a difference in attitudes from the different classes. Now, it's not just so straightforward. In other words, if you decide you want to take somebody out to eat and you say, I want to take you out to eat, and they say, well, where are we going to go? You don't say, well, let me see your portfolio, and I'll decide, if I got to take you a place that serves a lot of food or quality food, or if we got to go somewhere where there's a lot of flu on the plate, so that you'll enjoy it. But what that tells us is not everybody reacts to the things the way that we react to them. And so as we try to love our neighbor as ourselves, we have to be concerned with hopefully understanding what we can to communicate to them. All right, and then finally, this is the one that I really feel like is the most important. I was introduced to this book back in the summer, bought the book over Christmas and read it. And really, I felt like it has made a change in my life. And it's The 5 Languages of Love by Gary Chapman. Rick Coffo said here, when they counsel people for premarital counseling, he talks to them about, they use his needs, her needs. And somebody else said there's a book by Scott Peck called The Road Less Traveled. But basically they say the same thing. And some of the things that Gary Chapman has said in his book is that, first of all, falling in love and being in love is 2 separate things. That falling in love is kind of an emotion, but then real love is a work. It's an effort. It's an action. And that the falling in love, that courtship love, is a blinded love and will last no longer than 2 years. And so when it was cute to hear your boyfriend snore, 2 years later of marriage, you want to put a pillow over his head and suffocate him. Or when your girlfriend blows her nose and it sounds a little E-flat, you know, that's kind of cute when you're dating. But 2 years after that, you're ready to cut the nose off, you know, because you can't stand it. But I think also this happens in churches, that people come to church and they go through that 2 years of honeymoon with the congregation, and then when their love is not being met, when the honeymoon's over, then they have nothing, you know, there's no reason for them to stay. And part of that, I think, is why people have affairs. After 2 years of that romantic puppy love kind of deal, you don't get it from your mate, so you find it from somebody else. You know, but what happens is you have it for 2 years there, and then all of a sudden you're involved with 2 people, and you've lost that love. And so what Chapman was trying to tell us is that we all have a love tank. Everybody has a love tank, and he said there are 5 fuels, he calls them languages. There are 5 languages that truly can fill, but only one of the 5 can truly fill your love tank, and this is your primary language. And if you're not getting that language, then your love tank is not being filled. Now, you understand it from other people, but you're not getting it you're not really filling the love tank. And so he talks about it in a marital relationship, but I'm talking about not only that, but in the relationship of just loving your neighbor as yourself. And so, what are the 5 love languages? Number 1, words of affirmation. And some people, their love tank is filled by complimenting them. Now, each of these languages have what he calls a dialect. And so, what word of affirmation may be important to you may not be important to the other person. And as you get to know that person, it could be that you're complimenting somebody on having a clean house or good cooking and taking care of the car, and it's more like they need it to be how they look, how they feel, this sort of thing. And so as you try to learn to love someone, you try to learn what it is that affirms them. And notice down here at the bottom it says, harsh words will destroy a person whose primary love language is words of affirmation. That kills them, for them to be talked down to. So 1 of the love languages is words of affirmation. 2 is acts of service. Acts of service is where you do things for other people. And some people only feel loved when you are doing these things for the other people. In his singles book, Gary Chapman wrote the one on married couples, but he also did a sequel on the 5 love languages for single people. And it gave an example of a roommate this girl who had a roommate who was very messy. And on her half of the room, there was empty Coke cans, there were empty pizza boxes, there was empty, there was trash where she had thrown something away. And so one day when her roommate was gone, out of love, she cleaned up the other side of the room. When her roommate got there, the first thing she said was, "What, do you think I'm a slob?" She totally reacted the wrong way. And so what Chapman says is, we're trying to love people. We need to know. Sometimes it's just a matter of asking, is it all right if I do this? Is it all right if I do this for you? And so, but that's how some people receive their love, is through the acts of service. Quality time is the 3rd language of love, and that's where you actually spend dedicated time with that person. It's not a matter of sitting on the sofa watching a movie together, or sitting on a sofa and you're reading a book and they're reading a book, but it's a matter of where you totally focus in on somebody. An example he gave was a married couple, and the lady came home and complained about what was happening at work. the husband said, well, here's what you need to do. You need to do this, 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 and this. 2 days later, she comes home and says, you can't believe what happened at work. And she told what happened. And the guy said, well, did you do this, this, and this? And she said, no. Well, he said, well, then you need to do this, this, and this. And so this happened about 3 or 4 times. And finally, she came home and said, you can't believe what happened at work. And the husband said, if you're not going to do what I've told you to do, just don't talk to me about it. If you're not going to take my advice, don't talk to me about it. Well, they stopped talking. Eventually, they got a divorce. And he said he realized now, too late, that she didn't want advice. She just wanted somebody to listen. She just wanted somebody to listen. My junior high principal says his wife's the same way. She comes in and she says, let me tell you what happened. The first thing he says, is this one where I just nod my head, or is this the one where I offer suggestions when it's over? And she'll tell him, and then he'll do what he's supposed to do. But that's quality time. People need that. Some people need that quality time. Others is gifts. Some people, they see their love only through gifts, or they only feel love through gifts. And a gift person is one that really, it doesn't matter what the gift is. It's the matter that it's a gift. You've seen the commercial maybe about the chewing gum where the daddy wraps up the chewing gum wrapper into a bird. Have you seen that? And he gives it to the daughter, and then the daughter's older and he does the same thing, wraps it, makes this little chewing gum wrapper into a bird and gives it to her. And then, years later she's going to college and a box drops off of the car where they're packing the car, and it's a shoebox full of little birds that the daddy has made through the years. That's a classic example of somebody whose primary love language is gifts, and they feel loved by the gifts. The last one is touch. And that is, of course, you've got to understand there's a difference in what the marriage book and the singles book talks about appropriate touching. And so there's touching that some people are huggers, and this is how they feel loved. Handshakes, pats on the back, kisses, this sort of thing. Those are the things that make a person feel loved. And if it's in your intimate relationship with your mate, if you're not getting that, then you don't feel the love from your mate. And it's important then that you study and you talk with each other about what it is that makes the person feel loved. And down here, I'm sorry, hit the wrong, here, to a touch person, inappropriate touching is devastating. A child being beaten, if they are a touch person, or abused, it devastates them. It kills them if they are a touch person. And so, the 5 languages of love are words of affirmation, acts of service, quality time, gifts, and touch. And so I ask you, is your love tank on empty? If it is, then is your love language being spoken to you so that you feel loved? And are you speaking your neighbor's love language so that they can feel loved? I think that's important, that we know each other well enough and we can do that. So understand a couple of things. Understand that to show love, some people speak their primary love language. If you have a person that's giving you gifts, or if somebody is complimenting you, a lot of times that is their way of showing love. And so what we need to do to love our neighbor is to love God and our neighbor. We need to speak and understand the 5 love languages. I left, when I taught at Berry High School, I didn't eat lunch. I didn't have time to eat lunch, which was all right. I would stop at a convenience store and get a Coke and a candy bar. And the lady got to know me, and we got to be good friends. One day, I had taken my billfold out, and when I got down there to pay for my Coke and candy bar, I didn't have my billfold. And she said, that's okay. Come back. You'll be back tomorrow. You pay for it then. And so I said, well, thank you. Of course, I was totally embarrassed, but I didn't want to drive without my driver's license. So I went back up to the school, got my billfold, came down. I thought, well, it'll only take 2 minutes to go in here and pay her for this. And when I went in, now I look back, there was a shocked look on her face. I think metaphorically I slapped her in the face because she was trying to be nice to me, and I just totally threw it off. I wanted to take care of my part of the bargain, and I think it insulted her that I did that to her. And so we need to learn how to accept love and also give love. Now, I have up here, I have the handout that talks about Ruby's rules and then some of the things that we've talked about, the love language. And then in the book, 5 Languages of Love, it talks about a survey that you can take, a survey for the man, a survey for the woman, and it has you calculate the number of responses, and then when you total it up, it shows what appears to be your primary love language, so that you know what it is. If you want that, that's up here. I have that for you, and we'll be more than happy to share for you. So wrapping up what we've done this spring term, I'm supposed to be batting cleanup. Start with what we've done today. We've talked about the two commandments. The two commandments, love God, love your neighbor, and then love yourself. But when I think about Pete Blank's class on Bible trivia, is that not showing God's love by spending quality time learning His Word? Donnie Phillips' class, the whole time Donnie was talking, I thought, man, I wish I could come right back after that and talk about commitment, because sometimes I don't think we're showing the love language to the people who are coming to church, and that might keep more people involved. Mike Ermit's class, all those scriptures we read was about service and acts of service for people, and is that not showing our love? Tony McBride's class on alcohol, do we love ourselves enough, the necessary inference, to take care of the gift of protecting our bodies? Jimmy Pettis' class on the rock, does that not show God's love and the gift of His Son? John Hill's class on the parables, are the parables not God's way, Jesus' way of showing us how we are to learn? Tom Booth's class on persecution, are the persecuted people not showing their love for God by showing their words of affirmation and acts of service? Brian Pruitt's class last week on the gift of time and the quality time we spend on Sabbath rest, prayer, quietness, meditation, a showing of love to and from God. So we've had all these things that I think center on this, that God has said the two greatest commandments, to love the Lord your God with all your heart, and all your soul, all your mind, and then to love your neighbor as yourself. And so why do we do this? Why do we study this? In order to help us, let us consider how we can help people meet their full potential, and that's the Maslow hierarchy, how we can help us to consider understanding that not everyone feels the same way as we do about things, Ruby's rules, and learn to speak and understand the 5 love languages. And that is from Gary Chapman's The 5 Love Languages. And I ask why. And I think the wrap-up is what 1 Corinthians 13 says, though I speak with the tongues of men or angels and have not love, I'm become as a sounding brass or a tinkling cymbal. And though I have the gift of prophecy and understand all mystery and all knowledge, and though I have all faith so that I can remove mountains and have not love, I am nothing. And though I bestow all my goods to feed the poor and give my body to be burned and have not love, it profits me nothing. Love suffers long and is kind. Love envies not, love vaunts not itself, is not puffed up, does not behave itself unseemingly, seeks not his own, is not easily provoked, thinks no evil, rejoices not in iniquity, but rejoices in truth, bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. Love never fails. Whether there be prophecies, they shall fail. Whether there be tongues, they shall cease. Whether there be knowledge, it shall vanish away. For we know in part, and we prophesy in part. But when that which is perfect is come, then that which is part will be done away. When I was a child, I thought as a child, I spake as a child, I understood as a child. But when I became a man, I put away childish things. For now we see through a glass darkly, but then face to face. Then I shall know, even also as I am known. And now abides faith, hope, and love. But the greatest of these is love. Thank you.